Hey everybody, welcome to the booth here at the Players Championship. We're going to see some cube here coming up really soon. This is going to be really great. We're going to get a chance to see the actual draft portion go. Now this isn't something that we normally have here for the Pro Tour coverage because there's normally so many people drafting. But for this one, we are going to get a chance to see actual draft as it goes. And as you might be noticing,
Hi.
I'm not alone. Hi, Zach.
Well, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you
Just
too, buddy.
sprinted from one end of the building to the other.
I saw that. Yeah, I could feel you coming in here.
Physical
It's really
fitness very important for Magic commentators.
So I was just saying hi to everybody.
Hi,
and I was letting
everybody.
them know that we are going to be watching Cube draft itself happen here. And this is really exciting stuff because we don't normally get this angle, this view on things, and I'm super stoked. Now, do you know who we're going to be watching?
I'm not exactly sure. I was too busy running from one place to the other. I see Reid Duke right there.
That's
so,
the guy.
Yeah?
We're going to be watching Reid Duke. Now, he is known for being an online specialist. This cube originated on Magic the Gathering online. Like, chances he's drafted this like less than 1,000 times is very low.
Well, we actually talked to Reid, and it turns out in 1 week of the cube being released on Magic Online, he drafted it 60 times. 60 cube drafts in a week. I don't know if I was awake that long.
Yeah, that's insane.
So, I mean, in terms of people with cube draft experience, we've got to expect Reid to be at the front of the pack.
Yeah, he's going to know everything here, and we're going to get a chance to watch him draft all of his picks. Now, I'm told that we're actually ready to go down to the feature match area here.
I can't wait.
And we are going right now to watch the cube draft for Reid Duke. Let's head down. All right, you get a look at the full stage here.
We'll be giving you a little extra time for the first few picks.
And we're going to have
Please open the pack marked A. And
some instructions being read to the players here. And they're going to count out. Now, you'll notice that the cube cards are already pre-sleeved. This is just for the players' convenience.
Right. Well, you got to protect these cards.
Yeah, these are not your standard, open a booster pack type draft. So these are really some of the best cards that have ever been printed in Magic history that we're going to get a chance to see.
Exactly. We've never seen a limited format like this in a Pro Tour before.
All right, so it looks like the players are looking at their first pick here, and we see Reid carefully going through his pack. Now, we're going to get a look. Here's a look at what Reid's looking at. And what do you see? You see an Aeon Chronicler there. There's an Underground Sea.
Right. I think that's a Scorn Villager to the front. He's eyeing that Aeon Chronicler. I think I'd be looking at the Underground Sea in a pack like this. I mean, lands are just so valuable in a format where you know every one of your cards is going to be very good.
Yep, I see a Koth of the Hammer. There's a Restoration Angel, a Disenchant. So this first pick is going to be very, very critical. It's going to give us a clue as to what Reid has in mind going forward for this. He knows the archetypes that are stronger than others. He knows some of the niche archetypes.
And the thing is, like, you're talking about archetypes. Unlike normal limited, where you really just, and he takes the Aeon.
So we see the Aeon Chronicler come down for Reid Duke here. So he apparently likes blue.
Right, and Aeon Chronicler is a very strong card. I mean, the thing is, in Cube, you can't just draft good cards. You really have to draft an archetype.
Yes.
And you want to move into an archetype. Otherwise, your deck's just going to be a pile of cards. Aeon Chronicler, great in decks with upheaval, great in slower blue decks. Basically, anything that wants to accrue gradual advantage wants a Chronicler.
All right, so he's moving a few cards to the front on his second pick here, and I see, well, that's kind of funny. There's a Shadow Mage Infiltrator, John Finkel's.
I was going to say, what if he cast Shadow Mage against the Shadow Mage?
He's in the second draft pod here, but he is in the building, which is kind of funny. There's also a Cruel Ultimatum, which was pulled in front. I see a Scroll Rack, a Pithing Needle, a Despise.
I'd be looking at that Rishadan port, especially with late-game cards like Aeon Chronicler in your deck. All you want to do is slow down the game, but it doesn't look like something Reid's considering.
Nope. I see a Sneak Attack, one of the spicy cards in this cube. It allows you to put in a creature for a turn, give it haste. You can put in some ridiculous stuff. It looks like he's gone with a... That's kind of an interesting pick to me, the Shadow Mage Infiltrator.
I feel like cards that, I actually really like Shadow Mage in Cube. I think it's sort of under-respected. Goes very well with this Chronicler in terms of creatures that give him advantage while dealing damage. But again, it can block the turn you play it, get through, and it allows you to get in the driver's seat as a control deck, because if you connect 2 or 3 times with that card, the game's just going to be over.
Especially in Cube when the cards that you're drawing are so much more powerful. Now, in his third pack here, pick, we see a Faith's Fetters. He's pulled to the front. There's also a Sundering
Titan, very powerful in cube as people tend to be ambitious with their mana bases.
Right, and speaking of mana bases, it looks like he's taking a peek at his Steam Vents here. So are you thinking that maybe he's thinking of going Grixis here and then with a chance to potentially wheel that Cruel Ultimatum? That card only goes in narrow decks.
Right, and that's the thing. You don't necessarily have to take it early. He does take the Face Fetters, however.
So this leans us more towards an Esper route.
Right, and sometimes you could just be in cube, you don't even have to be even 3 colors. It could be, blue-black splashing the Fetters, using that to force through his Shadow Mage Infiltrator.
Right. So this is going to be interesting because he doesn't have a super... Ooh, so he's looking at a 4th pick balance here.
I mean, you've got to believe that the color white and especially white control cards are just wide open, seeing a balance going this way. Thoughtseize is a card you want in every black deck to be sure, but I just don't know how you pass balance.
Balance just being the most powerful card in this particular pack. There's also a Maze of Ith, which would be pretty nice if he is going to go for the controlling route, but a balance is just so powerful.
Yeah, devastating. I mean, I've got to wonder what's in the rest of the packs for you not to immediately slam a card like balance. This isn't a powered cube with moxes and things like that, which is something that, is a pretty popular format as well.
Yeah.
Balance obviously better there, but you're still not going to be able to argue with it in any deck.
Exactly.
Now here we see him taking a look at Isolated Chaplain, which is going to help him get his 3 colors together in his Esper deck. I feel like you have to look at that Mystical Tutor given that you have a balance as well.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's absolutely true. He's got the Wall of Reverence pulled to the front here.
Right.
And he's going to take it. So Wall of Reverence is a card that can help stabilize the board and dig you out of a hole if you get down early. Right. Great control card. Reid seems to be very content to go hard into the control route, and look at that. He gets a Vindicate here.
Probably exactly what you want. Vindicate not only answers any permanent, but also can blow up lands, which is hugely important, again, in a format where people are playing very ambitious mana bases, and getting a little ahead can put the game, swing it radically in your favor.
Absolutely, and having just kind of a catch-all like Vindicate seems to just be very comforting when you're the control deck.
Well, and you don't, if you run into something like Sneak Attack, rather than just having to let it sit there and bash you when your opponent draws an Eldrazi, you can take care of answers that you're not necessarily anticipating.
Yeah, so somebody plays a turn 2 Survival of the Fittest, and you just kind of roll your eyes because you're like, he's going to get so much value. And now we see a Damnation as well. Another fantastic control card. He's looking pretty, he's got the Aeon Chronicler.
Right.
But right now he's black-white, and I'm assuming that some blue will come around. Now, that's a big question here. Blue, a lot of people consider blue kind of a high-level color, and the advanced players love to play it. Would you expect blue to be heavily drafted at these
I'd expect blue, if anything, to be overdrafted. I feel like players like this really like blue decks. Now, Wheel of Fortune went very late in the last pack.
I saw that. Now, that wouldn't particularly go... Now, color aside, that isn't the kind of card that a control deck necessarily wants,
he doesn't want it for his deck. It's just you got to be paying attention, I think, to the fact that it's in the pack this late.
Now, I see a Brian Elemental, a Razormane Masticore, and a Living Death. I think Living Death is fantastic.
Living Death also very shocking that it's in the pack.
Yeah, I'm really surprised too, because that card can be a strategy in and of itself.
Right. Sometimes you just cast it as a Wrath of God, and you've evoked Moldrifter on the 3rd turn, and you just can't ever lose.
Right. And now we see the Disenchant has come back to Reid here, and it looks like that's where he's leaning to pick. I see an Etched Oracle. I don't think that he can make an Etched Oracle work with the current mana base that he's got going.
I don't think so either. I mean, getting 3 colors in after he passed on Isolated Chapel is going to be challenging enough. I don't think he can play 4. Right. Disenchant, not a card you normally expect to be good in Limited, but very, very good in Cube due to mana accelerants and things of that nature.
Now, we do see that the Cruel Ultimatum did wheel, but he's not really in that direction.
He's really basically black-white. Reid apparently said earlier that he did want to stay out of blue if he could. Despise all of the 1-mana discard spells, great in a sort of black-white control deck that he's looking to draft.
Now he's got a Snuff Out and a Blood Demon to choose from. He chooses the Snuff Out. Again, sticking with the control route. I think a lot of players think that when they're doing a cube draft like this, they can take the answer cards that they need first, and then they can get the finishers later.
Right. I will say, though, I mean, his deck is very good at killing creatures, Living Death, Damnation, now Terminus that he's taking.
Yep.
I think that you might want a card like Blood Gift Demon just to gain some of the card advantage back, so you're not just casting removal spells and not doing anything.
Is that Spinning Darkness?
That is Spinning Darkness. Very good in a
Correct.
deck like this that's going to have to rely upon cards like Phyrexian Arena, Dark Confidant. We saw him pass the Thoughtseize in order to get ahead on cards.
And is that a Vampire Hexmage or a Teleria West he's got to choose here?
And he takes the Hexmage.
30 seconds.
Black-white decks sometimes have a problem with Planeswalkers. He's got a Vindicate and a Face Fetters that can get around those. But Hexmage also just does some work against aggro decks and can help threaten the walkers as well.
Yeah.
Also very good in concert with Living Death, actually.
Yeah.
You can sack it whenever you want to and get
And
the
get
card
it back. Yeah.
Right.
One of the things about Living Death that's kind of interesting as well is that it is actually a board sweeper in and of
Exactly.
itself, right? Like you can just play it, even if you're not abusing it by getting a bunch of crazy stuff back yourself, you can just use it to wipe their board, assuming they don't have much in the yard.
Oh, yeah, Marshall. I mean, I've played
Picks
in
down,
hundreds of cube
please.
drafts by now.
Yeah.
And I think
Open
I
up pack
cast
mark
Living
B,
Death more
ensure that it
Oh,
for
really?
the board sweeper
15
effect because,
cards.
trying to set up a huge combo is hard when you're drafting, but getting one or two creatures in the graveyard and casting a back-breaking sorcery on turn 4 or 5, you don't need to get very many creatures back to make Living Death worth your while.
Right. And sometimes it's just an
Pick
insane
up
blowout.
50 seconds.
I've seen
Right,
that card
exactly.
just be completely crippling. All right, so we're in pack 2. Pick one for Reid here.
Yeah, we see
So he's bringing some stuff to the front. There's an Esper Charm. Again, he seems to be leaning towards having some blue support here, but maybe not a ton. There's a Blood Crypt, a Pristine Talisman. Is that a Oki Gang Shinobi?
No, that's an Ink Eyes.
Oh, an Ink Eyes,
actually, which is
okay.
one of the earlier cards he's looking at. Again, very good in decks like this where you can turn your incidental creatures into just such massive swings.
I also see a Route.
Yeah, I think with his deck having the amount of board sweepers it
Yeah,
does.
he doesn't need that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would take Esper Charm right now. The discard actually a very underrated aspect of that card. You can get their last 2 big threats. And
At
again, he's
instant
got-
speed.
At instant speed,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, during your draw step. Nothing like hearing that.
Right, and then there's nothing like untapping in a
Draft.
deck with
Lay
cards
out
like Eon
14
Chronicler when your
cards.
opponent has an empty hand, and that's exactly what he takes here.
Yeah. Now, I bet you he wishes he had that Underground Sea in his deck, huh?
I think so. That
Pick up
and the
50
Isolated
seconds.
Chapel. Right now, he does not have any mana fixing for what looks to be a pretty straightforward 3-color deck. I think you have to start taking mana fixing, and to be fair, cards like Impulse.
one of my
over
favorite
anything.
cards.
Wow, Karn Liberated.
Karn
is
Liberated.
One of the best cards in the cube, but having to pass that scrub land
Yep.
has got to hurt.
It does. Now, the Scrubland will go into some other decks, but not necessarily. It won't necessarily be gone by the time it comes back, but you certainly wouldn't count on it. But I don't see how you could pass a Karn here.
I think Karn. I mean, I've first picked more Karns than most cards I can think of. I mean,
Yeah.
it gives you an insurmountable late game. It deals with every problem. It's hard to remove.
Yeah.
If he can get that Pristine Talisman back, it allows the acceleration to go somewhere.
This is
5
getting
seconds.
dreamy. I love Karn. I love Pristine Talisman. I think. Now, if let's say that he wheeled
Draft.
both the
Lay
Pristine
out 13
Talisman and the
cards.
Scrubland, does he just slam the Scrubland out of necessity?
I think you have to. I think he
Pick
really
up
needs
40
lands right now. I
seconds.
mean, again, you're drafting 45 cards. You only have 23 non-land cards to work with between 22 and 24. So
Ooh, he's got some spicy stuff. I see an Oblivion Ring, a Liliana of the Veil. There's also a Force Spike, which can do some work, and a Kitchen Finks. What do you like here?
I think I like Oblivion Ring. Force Spike, we've seen not that much blue. It's a hard card to splash. I think his mana is going to be pretty bad if
Yeah.
he's trying to go 3 colors.
Yeah, I agree.
It's possible like Liliana is just so good it's worth it. I actually tend to like Kitchen Finks better than Liliana in cube drafts. So
Okay.
I think Liliana is extremely good.
Yeah, and
that's
it looks
what he
like Reid
takes.
agrees with you. He went in ahead and picked it.
Draft.
I mean,
Lay out
there's some
12
matchups where
cards.
Liliana doesn't do exactly what you want, but there's some where it's exactly
Pick
what
up
you want.
Sure.
30 seconds.
And he is in heavier black. I mean, his sweepers are both double black. We see him snap the Watery Grave to the
He
front.
did. There's also a preordained that he'd like to play, but again, the Factor Fiction? Oh, this is a pretty stacked pack
Oh,
for
man,
Reid.
and
I see a
Glacial
Shriek
Fortress?
Maw as well.
Oh, I think he just wants to slam the pack.
Yeah.
I know we're done with this pack here. I don't need anybody
he
else's
would take
cards.
every card there in that front section.
Yeah. Yeah, Factor
5
Fiction
seconds.
is hugely important, but I've got to think you've got to take Watery Grave. Right now, he just can't cast his
Draft.
spell.
Yeah, and
Lay
he
out
took
11
Factor
cards.
Fiction, so he looks like he's decided that that taking the most powerful card out of each pack is going to be the way that he's approaching it. We've seen that consistently.
Yeah.
The Oblivion
25
Ring was
seconds.
maybe a hedged a little bit pick over the Liliana, but he took the Liliana anyway.
I guess.
Wow, look at this. We have Elesh Norn. a Martial Coup, and what is that behind?
That's an Eternal Dragon.
Oh, an Eternal Dragon.
That could help him fix his mana
Kinda.
if he got the Scrubland.
If he got the Scrubland.
Or if he had the Underground Sea, which he doesn't. Or if he had the Watery Grave, which he passed. I mean, or I
5
guess that
seconds.
doesn't get specifically Watery Grave. But if he gets any dual lands, that could help out. I mean, again, Martial Coup,
Draft.
though, I don't.
Lay out
Yeah, and
10
that's what he
cards.
takes.
Oh, I like Elish Norn there myself.
I think Elish Norn and Martial Coup are very similar cards.
Yeah, you're probably right.
You know, but you can reanimate Elish Norn.
Yeah.
If you
Pick
get
up
some of that. Yeah,
25
I think I like
seconds.
Norn better. Martial Coup is one of the best Wraths you could possibly have in your deck.
Yeah,
though.
it just feels like he's kind of got the Wraths covered right now.
Sure.
Ooh, Recurring Nightmare. This is fairly late for a Recurring Nightmare, is it not?
Yeah, it's very late for a card that powerful. He's also taking a look at Venser. The thing is, he doesn't have that many value creatures to loop Recurring Nightmare with, which would make it a
Right.
little worse in
5
his deck
seconds.
than
Yeah,
in other decks.
it feels like Recurring Nightmare is a card you would have wanted to have earlier.
Right.
Draft.
Now, what I
Lay
and
out
he
9
takes
cards.
Venser the Sojourner. I can't believe he wasn't even looking at the Necromancy, which is at the end of the pack. I think one
Pick
of the
up,
most powerful
20
cards
seconds.
in the entire cube.
What does that do again?
Necromancy is an enchantment that it's
Does
basically.
it make a dude?
Necromancy allows you to reanimate a creature from your graveyard. Yeah.
Oh,
it's-
Necromancy.
Necromancy,
Right.
It lets you cast basically animate
5
dead at
seconds.
instant speed, which is important with Eldrazi in the cube. 'cause
Yes.
You can put the trigger on the stack, Necromancy them at the end
Lay
of
out
turn.
8
Yes.
and,
And this is the one where you can do it at instant speed, but then you lose the guy. But
Right.
but you can also do it at sorcery speed and just keep
yeah,
it.
exactly. And you can do it to your
Pick
opponent's
up,
creatures.
Yeah.
20
Now,
seconds.
So a Skin Render, a standard 2-for-1 type creature, solid pick. I mean, he's going to face some creatures at some point. So we see a Tidings and a Kega the Tide Star. Is that a Time Spiral as well?
That is a time spiral
A
indeed.
Bloodghast, and I thought I saw something
5
down
seconds.
at the end of the pack that looked.
I think that's an Akroma's Vengeance.
Oh, it is. Yeah, never mind that. Okay.
You see him
Draft.
snap the Tidings to the
Lay out
front, and
7
that's what he
cards.
takes. Reid seems to be prioritizing raw card advantage over basically everything.
I mean, everything that he's taken has just been the most powerful.
Pick up,
Like you said, just the
15
most
seconds.
rawly
Right.
powerful thing. But how nervous is Reid here? He just took a double blue casting cost spell here, and he still doesn't have any mana fixing in his deck.
You're right. I guess blue
5
and black
seconds.
are now more of his primary colors, which are really we saw it to be seeming to be black, white.
Draft. Lay
He
out
takes
6
Blood
cards.
Crypt right now. Maybe in order to get a black source with something like a blue-red sackland,
Okay.
Pick up,
which can come up
10
sometimes. He might be looking to splash red cards. Who knows?
All right, so the Scrubland did come
5
back for
seconds.
Reid here, so
Huge.
that's a windfall for him. He's going to be very happy, and he's
Draft.
to slam it. Now,
Lay out
I know he
5
was
cards.
interested in the Impulse. I saw him bring it to the
Right.
front when the pack first came around, but that wasn't really close.
Oh, I mean, there's only so greedy
Pick
you can
up.
be.
Exactly.
All right, and he's
And-
looking at the Force Spike now that blue looks to be one of his more primary colors. And I think in a
5
deck
seconds.
with this many expensive spells, you really want stuff to do in the early turns.
There you go. Yeah,
Draft.
he's going to need
Lay
an
out 4
untapped
cards.
blue source pretty early though, and right now his deck feels much more
Pick
heavy
up,
towards the
5
black-white end of the
seconds.
spectrum, and it's kind of and he also got the Glacial Fortress back as well.
Draft.
Which I think he has
Lay
to
out
take.
He
3
does.
cards.
I saw Frantic Surge there, but yeah.
I feel like his deck is shifted more into a blue-black
Pick up,
splash white
5
deck.
seconds.
Whereas
Okay.
out of pack one, it was black-white splash blue.
Okay.
We don't really see that much double white. Now, I think
Draft.
you still take Eternal
Lay out
Dragon
2
purely
cards.
because you have Scrubland in your deck.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth 2 to pay
Pick up,
to get your
5
Scrubland.
seconds.
There you go. Yeah, at this point, it might be just a necessity. So we see a Stifle and
Draft.
A
and pass the
turnabout?
final
a
card.
Turnabout.
I feel like you almost would have
Show
taken the Turnabout. I mean, his deck is pretty soft to decks with counter spells because he
You
has
now
so
have
many
45
expensive
seconds for
big
review.
threats. I think being able to Turnabout your opponent at the end of the turn and just cast something as simple as Tidings
Uh-huh.
would be hugely valuable. And I don't know what the Stifle is going to do for him, but at any rate, he takes the Stifle.
Okay. Yeah, probably won't make the main deck. So looks like he's pulling all the black and blue cards maybe to the front, and this is a really critical time in a timed draft where he's really trying to figure out what he needs. We get a good look at Reid here, and he's like, oh man, I don't have any mana fixing. So, we do know that going into the last pack, he's probably going to be prioritizing it fairly high.
Right. I mean, you see the Esper Charm still firmly in his pack. I think he still wants to be a 3-color deck, but yeah, he's got to figure out how to make the mana work. I mean, we see double
Picks
white,
down, please.
double blue, and double black spells.
Yeah.
That's,
Open
I
the
mean,
pack
you've
mark
got to
C,
decide which one
Make
of
sure
those
that it
colors
has
you're
15
prioritizing.
cards.
Otherwise, you're not going to be able to cast anything reliably in the early turns.
Exactly. And speaking of the early turns, it feels like he's got the powerful top end later game pretty much locked up here. He needs stuff to do early.
Yeah, I think a card he really wants right now is something like
Pick
Wall
up
of Omens.
50 seconds.
Yeah, Wall of Omens. There's a Oh, there's a control magic. That definitely comes right to the front for him. And there is a Tundra. So let's see what Reid does. Again, he's faced with this same decision of overt power level versus getting his deck to a point where he can cast all of his spells. He brings a Forbid to the front as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Marsh. I just literally can't imagine not taking Tundra here.
You just slammed the Tundra.
I wouldn't even think about it. I mean, like, card power is not your problem here. Control magic, very good, and it does help him survive.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, again, it's double blue.
Yeah.
What is he
Another
gonna
double
cast?
blue spell to add to your pile, yeah.
Exactly.
And Tundra is a card that I would not expect to come back.
No. Right. Unlike Scrubland, it just goes and basically, like,
5
a lot
seconds.
of blue decks splash for removal. So.
Yep, and he did take the control magic, so Reid is sticking with
Draft.
plan A, which
Lay
is
out
take the most
14
powerful
cards.
thing that would fit into my deck.
Right.
And, yeah.
I mean, right now, like, Tundra would also allow his
Pick up,
Eternal Dragon
50
to
seconds.
produce blue mana, or to fetch
So
out
blue
mana.
or black mana.
Right, exactly right. So Eternal Dragon would just get all of your colors if you had Tundra in your deck. I mean, Control Magic, very good spell.
Yeah.
But I mean, at what point do you realize that, or do you begin to think that your card power is not going to matter because it's all going to be stuck in your hand?
Right. There has to be a point at which that happens. So we're going to get a look at what Reid's checking out here, but I think he's got an Inquisition of Kozilek. I see a Tithe.
Tithe would be really important right here. I think Inquisition is probably one of the top 5 black cards I want in a cube deck, though.
Oh,
that
I
turn
do
one
love that
discard
card.
is so important. Just being able to do anything on turn 1 is really a secret of cube, and he does take Inquisition.
5 seconds.
The thing is, like, unlike regular limited, where most things you can do on turn 1 just
Draft.
aren't that
Lay out
powerful,
13
Right.
cards.
you have plenty of good turn 1 options in a format like cube, and you don't
Pick
want
up
to time
40
walk yourself
seconds.
by not taking advantage
Yeah,
of that.
and they have plenty of good options,
Yeah.
right? You need to
Right,
prevent them
exactly.
from doing. All right, we see a Brainstorm.
Thawing Glaciers.
Oh, a Thawing
Exalted
Glaciers.
Angel,
I
Deep
mean,
Analysis.
that
That gets you all your colors.
it does get you
eventually.
your colors eventually. I don't know if it's the ideal solution here, but it is something. And then, is that an Exalted Angel as well?
That is exactly what that is.
So what do
Exalted
you
Angel.
like here? I mean, Brainstorm doesn't seem to do anything in his deck. He has
No.
0 shuffle effects, or at least very few. I can't remember any offhand.
Right. I mean, I think Brainstorm's pretty overrated in Cube in general. You really need
I
a lot
agree.
of shuffles to make
5
it work.
seconds.
What he's not looking at is the Mesmeric Fiend, which I think is probably the best card in the pack.
That's the
Draft.
one that
Yeah,
takes the
12
card out of their
cards.
hand until it goes away.
Exactly. It's like
Uh-huh.
a 1/1 Tide Hollow Sculler.
Yeah.
But he didn't even look at that, slamming the Thawing
Pick up
Glaciers into his
30
deck.
seconds.
So he might be starting to feel the pressure of his mana base a bit here, and is going to start. We might see him start to make some picks along those lines.
Now we see him looking at I think Ancestral Vision's the clear pack here.
Again, you wanted something to do early.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, he's shown that he prioritizes card advantage. He's already got cards like Snuff Out that will like keep him ahead if he can just get threats off the table. And having a really mana efficient way to draw
5
cards
seconds.
seems better than the sort of ponderous cancel of Undermine, because he doesn't care about making them lose 3 life.
Draft.
Right.
Or
Lay out
even more
11
late game
cards.
cards in Capsize.
Like Capsize, yeah, okay. So he does take the Visions. I think that's a pretty straightforward pick for his deck here. Also, having a cheap draw
up
engine like
25
Ancestral
seconds.
Vision, means that his mana does get helped out a bit, right? I mean, like the
Right.
more cards you draw, the more
Right.
chances you have to
Yeah.
hit your colors.
Card drawing is very good mana fixing.
Yes.
Now he's looking at Lingering Souls, got to be perfect for an Esper deck. Passing Wasteland always hurts, but you just can't afford a color.
How nervous would you be passing Wasteland, given what we know about his mana base currently?
Yes, I got my Scrubland. I can cast my spell. No, sir.
Do you think that Tithe is going
Lay
to
out
come back
10
to him?
cards.
It's not a card that people prioritize.
Yeah, I'm shocked at
Pick
the
up
lack of popularity of
25
that card. I
seconds.
mean, 1 mana draw 2 cards is not weak.
yeah. And it
that's-
can get dual lands, right?
Yeah.
It's just a plains card. It doesn't care
Right.
that it's basic or
Right,
not.
precisely. But, you see him looking at Liliana Vest now, Elspeth Tyrell, Arid Mesa. Black-white decks tend to want to have planeswalkers, but the Arid Mesa gets a scrubland. I think having 2 scrublands in a deck
5
like
seconds.
this is, about twice as good as having 1.
I
So-
would take an Arid Mesa here
Draft.
myself. He
Lay
took
out
the
9
Elspeth
cards.
Tyrell, again, sticking with the power plan.
Also, Arid Mesa could get his Blood Crypt that he took
Oh,
if
yeah?
he wanted to. So it would actually,
Pick up
it gets
20 seconds.
scrubland, but if you've already drawn that, you still
It
can
can get
black
black,
mana
yeah,
out
that's
of
true.
it. But Elspeth, again, very powerful planeswalker, can win games by itself. So.
Yep. I see an Essence Scatter, an Oust. Desolate Lighthouse is something that he's considering. I don't know what that blue card is right there.
5 seconds.
I think it's Forbidden Alchemy.
Oh, okay. That would also be fine in his deck. So there's actually quite a bit. Forbidden
Draft.
Alchemy.
Well,
He's going to
8
take the
cards.
oust. Again, I think he's going back to what you were saying. He needs things to do in the early
Yeah,
part of the game.
and he wants to trade 1-for-1. With as much card drawing as he has, he just wants to get
Pick up
cards out of his
20
hand to trade
seconds.
resources with his opponent.
Oh,
Exactly
what a
like
gift.
Path to Exile.
Path to Exile is definitely high on his list for cheap removal spells that he needs. Now, I don't like Oust as much in Cube generally because so many creatures have powerful enters the battlefield
seconds.
effects. You don't want them to be able to rebuy it.
That's for sure. But I think at a certain point, you
Draft.
just want to make sure you're not going to die.
Yes,
You know?
that
I
is
mean,
also the
obviously,
case.
Path to Exile is exactly the kind of card you want.
Yeah, that is a fantastic pickup for Reid's deck here.
Pick
You know,
up.
we saw him pass
15
Plateau,
seconds.
which if he had more sack lands could help to fix his mana.
Is
but
that a
it does not
Parallax
now.
Wave?
Parallax Wave,
Wow.
Duress, Forbid. Duress, actually, I like almost as much as Inquisition of Kozilek.
Yeah, so I didn't
5
see the
seconds.
Parallax Wave the first time this pack came around. I'm assuming we've seen this pack, but
We have.
you know,
Draft.
have you
Lay out
seen
6
Parallax
cards.
Wave with Venser? Which he also has. That's a pretty nice soft lock that can
Pick
keep
up.
Keep your
10
opponent out of the game
seconds.
if they're playing anything creature based. Did
Yeah.
he take Parallax Wave?
He did take Parallax Wave.
I like it.
Now we
And
see him
there's
eyeing
the
that
top. 5
tide. I
seconds.
think you just have to take this card right here. You've been greedy enough, Reid.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Draft.
Have some discipline.
They did it.
And we see it. Yeah, Parallax Wave is a card that, you know, I mean, a lot of people, including
Pick up.
me, the first time I
10
saw it,
seconds.
didn't even know what it does.
Right.
Like on a literal level. But it can
Yeah.
just plague Wend your opponent for as long as it matters.
5
Now we
seconds.
do see him looking at the Mesmeric Fiend.
Hey, so it came back to him, so he's got a chance to pick it up here. It looks like he's
Draft.
going to take it.
Yeah,
have
I
4
think so. I
cards.
think that card is actually just incredibly powerful.
I think it's great.
Like,
Pick
it's
up.
only a 1/1
5
body,
seconds.
but it's card advantage. If you have anything to do at all, like a sword or even just like a ninjutsu creature, just
Draft.
literally anything.
Lay out
Yep.
3
He
cards.
took
Ton
the
of value.
Undermine there, decided not to take the Crucible of
Yeah.
Worlds. It doesn't do a whole lot of
Right, counters are good
Pick up.
against him.
5
Having
seconds.
access to counter magic is always good for you.
Wake Thrasher, I think he's, Tinker
Draft.
doesn't go in his deck at
Lay out
all.
2
and
cards.
Wild Nicottle, I guess he's not worried about facing a Wild Nicottle, so he
Sure.
just picks up a Wake Thrasher.
Pick up.
Yeah, and Wake Thrasher,
5
I mean, he
seconds.
does need a way to end the game.
He does.
Doesn't have that many, so.
Yeah. The thing I don't like about it, Wake Thrasher as a
Draft.
win condition, is
And
just
keep-
that it is
and show
fairly
the final
fragile,
card.
and
Oh,
since Reid's deck doesn't play a ton
your
of
picks
creatures
face
anyway,
down
it's
until,
probably going to eat
deck
a
building
removal.
time.
Yeah, and it's certainly not playing any defense.
Yeah.
You know, which in the control deck, I mean, sometimes you just want like a Phyrexian Rager type card or whatever. Just play it
Yeah.
on turn 3, trade with their 2-drop. You're not excited about it, but you're going to get the advantage back later. You know,
Yeah.
Wake Thrasher just does not do that at all.
Wow. So what do you think about Reid's deck here? We can see that he's taken a direction of absolutely going for the control elements
Yeah.
here. His very first pick was Aeon Chronicler,
Should I keep the microphone?
and and he's just gone straight in there. Hi, welcome back to the booth. I am Marshall Sutcliffe. This is Zach Hill, and we just saw a pretty sweet draft. If that was your first experience looking at Cube, I know it can be a little bit overwhelming.
It's a lot of
but
cards, a lot of decisions.
fantastic stuff. I mean, like every pick, me and Zach
Oh,
are
yeah.
sitting here staring at our monitor, and we're trying to figure out, what he's going to take. And I like the tensions too, because I tend to be a little bit more along the lines of where you were at, Zach,
Uh-huh.
with prioritizing mana fixing. He didn't.
Sure, and Reid's done a lot of this, and he's played a lot of Magic, and he's at this tournament, which means he's very good, probably way better than either of us, so I
Right.
hate to call into question what he's doing.
Sure.
I mean, one thing that we didn't talk about is, you have 45 cards, you can only play 23 of them in a deck, but if what you do is just keep taking powerful cards,
Mhm.
you could just build the best mana base, like not because of lands, but you could just say, okay, I'm going to play the 23 of these
Yeah.
and allow my mana base to function.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that we didn't mention is that, remember, he's taken 45 cards
Right.
here, right? He's only going to be running 23, 22, 23 of them. There's going to be a large section of, if you look at the average power level of his deck, it was insane.
Exactly.
Right? It was like super, super high. One other thing I wanted to touch on real quick before we send it back to the studio was this was a 6-man draft, right?
Right.
Or no, this
No,
isn't
I
a
don't
full
think so.
8-man.
It's 8-man.
So this is exactly what Reid is used to.
On Magic
He
Online.
knows how often these things are going to wheel. Like, he
That's true.
knows this Tundra is probably not going to come back, or maybe this Scrubland will.
Well.
So there's probably a lot of him managing that on the fly as well.
That's true. Being able to anticipate what you can table in a format where all of the cards are as powerful as the card in Cube
Right.
is one of the most important skills you can have.
Right. Okay, so that was the Reid Duke draft. We're going to be seeing another one coming up in a few minutes here, but for now we're going to send it back to the studio for just a short bit.
Hello everyone, welcome back to studio. Here it's Rich and Rashad with you. Just to talk over the draft we've just seen, look ahead to the draft that's coming. What a good start to the weekend. Cube is just so much fun.
Cube is so exciting. It's, you know what, I'm more of a constructed player, but this is like you're drafting a constructed deck. So
Yes.
it's the best of both worlds. I just love it. I just love it.
There was quite a lot of debate last night at the player party about where Cube sits in terms of limited versus constructed. Some people were saying pretty much what you've just said. It's like almost like a constructed format where you forgot to bring your deck with you, so you have to like trade for them with 8 other players.
Yeah, just one of each card, and then
Sure.
you gotta find your redundancies, and it's kind of cool.
But then there were other people who said, listen, you end up with a constructed deck, sure, but it's still limited, it's still draft, it's still booster draft. And the skills of the people who 3-0 drafts are the ones who are going to win, not necessarily the people who know all the archetypes and in terms of the constructed masters. So where do you sort of sit on that line? Because it's a strange hybrid format in a way.
Yeah, I'm very close to it's a constructed format, and you need to go in with your strategy, or at least be thinking of the archetypes that are already in this cube as you're making your picks. It's not like the conventional draft strategy where you can end up with multiple copies of like a Searing Spear, or there's a clear pick order. This card is definitely better than that card.
Right.
All these cards are first picks. They're all just awesome cards. So you're not picking the best card. You're picking the right card for your deck.
Okay, let's take a look at what Pod 1 looked like then. We obviously saw Reid Duke there. Here comes the field. Reid was there. He was passing to Suchin Quo, round to Josh Utter-Layton. Then we had Ochoa, Estrati, Nakamura, Louis Scott Vargas, and then back round to Alexander Hayne. Now, those early picks, we know that Reid did a ton of drafting. He was something like 60 cube drafts coming into this. And that's in a week.
He's an online specialist, right?
Yeah, but we did the sort of math on that. So it's like maybe 100 hours. Assume that you make some finals and some second rounds and so on. About 100 hours. So that week, he was training to be a junior doctor, basically. That's what he could have done with the week instead. It's like on call, 7 14-hour days of just drafting cube.
Hey, it's worth it. It's the gratification. It's, you know what, if I had that much time to spare, I probably would have done more.
Well, that's the week's vacation, right? You take the week when it's cube. So let's look at his early picks. He kicks off with Aeon Chronicler, moves into one of his opponents, though not in this draft. John Finkel's coming up in the next one with Shadow Mage Infiltrator. We knew beforehand that Reid liked blue and white cards.
Oh yeah, you could definitely see it from that first pick. Aeon Chronicler, it's a powerful card. It's not really a archetype defining card. That's the thing.
Sure.
So he's definitely going, I want to be blue-white, I want to be some blue-based control deck, so I'm starting off with Aeon Chronicler because it goes in that deck, and I know I'll play it in that deck.
Every pick is so good, it's hard to get excited about picks, but I imagine that having gone Face Feathers 3, Balance 4, I think that Balance at 4 is a pick that you actually get excited by.
Yeah,
You just go,
not only did he go, because he goes perfectly in blue-white control, but you know that white is open because Balance is probably the most powerful white card in this cube.
Right.
And if it went through 3 or 4 people, you know that you're going to get some more good white cards coming in that direction.
Incidentally, when we talk about the most powerful card in this cube, don't forget you can get the full list. I think it's going along at the bottom of your screen. You can check out the full contents of the WotC cube that we're using here this week. So we have Balance, then he gets Wall of Reverence, and then again some like authentic removal, Vindicate. What a gorgeous card that is. I used to use that as LD back in the day. Turn 3 Vindicate, turn 4 Vindicate, turn 5 Vindicate. Oh, got no land. That's a shame.
I mean, that's one thing to do with your Vindicates.
Absolutely, but probably that's not what they're doing here. And then, of course, he's got Damnation, the beautiful card, and then Living Death. And that was an interesting pick to see that deep as well.
Now, one thing about all those cards that you just mentioned, none of them were blue.
Yeah, so what was going on there? Because I know that you're kind of a little bit aware. We're going to talk later in the day about where all the cards fall around the table. But you have a little insight into the blue.
I have a little bit of insight because I had the opportunity to sit next to Scott Larrabee.
Okay, the tournament manager.
Yeah, tournament manager Scott Larrabee, and he had the spreadsheet with all of the packs laid out, every single card, and we noticed that the pack to the right of Reid,
Okay.
which would be
Alexander
Hayne, there was a cryptic command in there.
And there wasn't when it got to
And
Reid.
there wasn't one when we got to see it on the stream.
Oh, okay.
So, and a couple of packs further to the right,
Shuhei?
I think it's Shuhei.
Okay.
There was a Jace the Mind Sculptor.
And that certainly didn't make it.
That certainly did not make it past these two players right
So
here.
possibly we're looking at Hayne and Nakamura opening up with blue, or maybe LSV taking a second pick, Jace the Mind Sculptor, as a signal from Shuhei. We'll go through all that later in the day.
Yeah, but blue definitely dried up. There was no blue coming this way. We didn't see any good blue cards for Reid Duke.
For people who are inexperienced at reading a draft, there are so many Magic Online draft lists you can find. You can watch draft videos everywhere. You kind of know what a good blue-white control deck looks like. You know what a green stompy deck looks like. You know whether mono black is missing the cards. Every deck here, because all the cards are all-stars, every deck looks on paper really good. So it's really difficult, even for some of these players, to evaluate where they are in the draft. Put yourself in Reid's seat. What is he thinking right now as he's getting ready to build his deck? They're not actually building right now. We're going to wait until after the second draft, and then all 16 will build their decks simultaneously before we go to parallel rounds 1, 2, and 3. But what's Reid thinking right now?
Well, I know he's looking at his card pool and he's seeing a lot of powerful cards.
Yep.
In 3 colors. Blue, black, white, a lot of double blue, and a lot of these spells, he has Tidings, Aeon Chroniclers, double blue to, it may be single blue to suspend. But a lot of heavy blue, a lot of great black removal cards, a lot of good white spells, and we didn't see a lot of mana fixing. We didn't see him pick up a lot of mana fixing. So he's probably trying to figure out how he can play all of these great cards and have the mana and play to actually cast them.
Okay, now this was something that Zach talked about on coverage, and he said, look, he almost said he has to take the Scrubland, he has to take the Watery Grave, he has to take the Isolated Chapel. On none of those occasions did Reid take the land that Zach was advocating. And it's very, very hard for newer players. You know as well as I do, when you're a new player, you hand away your hallowed fountains to people for 9/9 green tramplers for 12.
Right.
Because how does a land ever help you win anything? And that's something that takes a lot of people years to get past. So how do you prioritize those lands?
Personally, or what's the consensus amongst
I mean,
the two? Personally,
yeah.
I'll just try to use some basic land. I love the powerful
Are you
cards.
the devil's mana base?
I
Are you
am.
6/6/6?
I maybe 5/5/5 and one 5/5/5 and I may snag one. One dual land here and
Super.
there if I get lucky.
12 color green.
But there's some strategy out there where you just want to take the mana fixing first, because then if you could cast every spell in this cube and you can just take your pick from the litter, your deck is going to be very, 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 very effective.
Okay, that was pod 1. The players are getting ready for pod 2. Let's take a look at who is coming your way on pod 2. Here we see John Finkel, Yuya Watanabe, Junior Yanagi, world champion, Paulavida Damarosa with his 9 top 8s, Shota Yasuoka, player of the year 2006, Owen Turtenwald, player of the year 2011, Brian Kibler, and Martin User. That would be one of the greatest top 8s of all time, and that's why the Players' Championship is so mental, because every round, it's the best of the best.
Every round's a feature.
These people are getting ready to rock and roll. Let's take you down back to the booth for the second cube draft of the Players' Championship 2012.
Skating one another.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the booth. I am Marshall Sutcliffe. This is Zach Hill. So we just saw Reid put together what could be a very, very powerful control deck.
Yeah.
with perhaps some mana fixing issues. We're not sure yet. It depends on how he builds it.
Sure.
He had a lot of powerful cards. They don't all have to go in his deck.
Yeah, exactly.
So he can build his deck to be a little bit more 2 colors with a splash. So we'll see. Now, in this next one, we get to see John Finkel.
Watching John draft is
Cube
like
draft.
watching art be produced.
It is.
He might be the greatest drafter of all time.
Yeah.
Anytime that I criticize the decision he makes, I'm going to feel kind of silly. I kind of
Yeah.
want to just sit back and watch what happens.
Okay, well, why don't we do that right now? So we're going to send it down to the feature match area where we're going to be seeing John Finkel Cube draft. This is going to be quite a treat. Let's go down there right now.
All right, players, welcome to the first draft.
All right,
Because of the
so
non-standard
players are
format,
getting some
you'll be receiving a
instructions
little
from
extra
our
time for the first few
judging
picks
staff.
in each pack.
This
Please open the
particular
booster
group of players
marked
has all been
A.
there before.
Oh,
however,
yeah.
so
Should
they're all in
contain
hand. We get
15 cards.
We're going to count out the first. All right, the players are asked to count the cards just to confirm that
Be
there's
sure
enough.
to
That's what's
show
going on
all
there.
of your
It's just a
picks over your
procedural
shoulder
thing.
to the person
They like to
behind you
make
as you
sure
make them.
if there was an extra card or one missing, it could be pretty.
Right, if a card like
yeah.
fell on
Pick
the
up the
floor or
cards, you
something
have
or didn't
50
get slipped up in the
seconds.
pack, it would mess up the entire draft.
And
so-
right away we get the first. Now, of note here, guys, these are fresh packs from the same cube base. There's no overlap here between the last one, so these can be all different. We see an opposition pull to the front right away. That's an interesting card to see, and he's just going
Oh,
to
and
take
John's
it.
just going to slam it. I mean, opposition's so powerful, it prevents your opponent from casting any of their spells if you have enough creatures there, because you just start tapping their lands. Commonly, we see blue-green or blue-white decks taking the most advantage of opposition. You just want to get as many small, maybe token creatures onto the table as possible.
Now, we do see a sort of Light and Shadow and a Vindicate in this pack that John is, it looks like he's just sort of taking note of, what might come back, what is going to be gone here, what do I want to see.
5 seconds.
These swords tend to go very highly in Cube Draft. At least there's a lot of players that
Draft.
consider
Play
them
out
sort of
15
windmill
cards.
first picks, and then you figure it out later. But it looks like, do you think that opposition was the most powerful card in that
Oh,
pack?
I think so. I think opposition is one of the most powerful cards ever printed. I mean, and,
Okay.
and the
Pick up
thing about opposition
50
is that it gives
seconds.
you a plan. You just get creatures on the table, and then you start winning the game.
Yeah.
And look, very early, he sees Edric, Spymaster of Trust, and Sakura Tribelder, both very good in the blue-green type of deck we showed you.
Yep.
Or we talked about. Now, he's also looking at Show and Tell, which can, a lot of times a blue-green deck wants to accelerate into larger threats.
Yeah, and speaking of acceleration, we've got a Devoted Druid pulled to the front here as well, which is a really great source of mana
Right.
acceleration.
And not just mana acceleration, actually very good with opposition. Because
Right.
if you can put a counter on it to untap it and tap multiple permanents.
Right, and yeah, exactly. So you can tap multiple permits. It also can enable a very early one. Yeah, this is I think he might take it.
think
There's
so.
also a Sakura Tribelder, which can help him get
5
mana fixing,
seconds.
and it also is a creature later for opposition. Unfortunately, it doesn't stay around if you want to do both.
Right. Edric, another very
Play out
important card, but
13
I think
cards.
Druid is exactly what he wants to follow up that pack with, and he takes it looking pretty decisive.
He didn't.
Pick up 40
One thing about
seconds.
John Finkel is that he makes up his mind. He knows where he's at there. So let's see.
He's taking a look at Verdant Catacombs, paused for a little bit on Mana Leak. I think Mana Leak very good in a deck like this where you just want to get to the late game and sometimes force through your most important threats. Verdant Catacombs just always helps with the mana. A deck like this with double blue and a lot of things that tap for green, it can help you out once you pick up a Breeding Pool or a Tropical Island, something like that. But he's staring at that Mana Leak.
He is, yeah. I also there's a couple other reasonable cards. You can see it's interesting. He sets down the pack and
seconds.
he's thinking. This is something that John Finkel does quite a bit. You'll see him do it in a match. He'll set his
Draft.
hand down in front of him
Lay out
and he'll put
12
his hands on
cards.
his lap, both
Oh,
of
yeah.
them, and he'll just look at the board. He's very cerebral in that way. It looks like he took the Verdant Catacombs here.
And I like taking lands early.
I mean, we
talked
watched
about
Reid Duke's draft last, and you made your opinions clear.
Pick up
You like
30 seconds.
prioritizing lands.
And again, something we want to just emphasize for everybody at home. Sometimes you're going to see the same cards in these packs as you saw in the last draft, like this Eon Chronicler
Yeah, there's
that
an Eon
John's looking at.
Chronicler.
Geddon, obviously huge, but the reason is that each of these tables are sort of treated independently. So there are no duplicate cards at the table, but there will be duplicate cards between drafts.
Exactly. Now, what do you think about Armageddon here? It's also one of the more raw
5
power
seconds.
level, but it does require you to do some things. It looks like John's willing to do those things. I mean, I can
Draft.
imagine a situation
out
where
11
he
cards.
gets an early opposition,
Right.
gets a few creatures out, and then just Armageddon.
Well, exactly. Geddon good for a lot of the same reasons opposition is. You just want
Pick
some
up
mana creatures.
25 seconds.
And like the second you're at all ahead, you just sort of pull the trigger and say, okay, we're not casting any spells anymore.
Right.
And it also allows John to draft green-white if he wants to abandon the opposition plan.
All right, so he's got a couple of picks pulled up here. I see a Sorin, Lord of Innistrad. Again, a powerful game-ending spell. Eventually, it's kind of grindy. Also, though, it does
5
make a bunch of
seconds.
creatures that work well with opposition. Wall of Omens, though, sweet with opposition too.
draft.
Keeps you alive.
Lay out 10 cards.
Even Mortar Pod, yeah. If he's in a blue-green deck, that deck tends to be light on removal, so you want a way to just remove problematic creatures, specifically Dark Confidant opposing mana
Pick up.
creatures.
Is that what he took?
25
Yeah,
seconds.
he took Mortar Pod.
Okay,
And the Germ, obviously, very good with opposition.
there you go.
So the thing is, like, you haven't seen him taking a lot of blue cards, but opposition frequently can be one of your 1 or 2 blue cards.
I thought that was interesting that he passed the Aeon Chronicler there. If we contrast that with what Reid was doing when he
Right.
first picked it.
I think
5
Reid is
seconds.
going more for single copies of very huge, powerful spells. You see John now looking at Battle Sphere,
Draft.
which is
Lay
a
out
huge,
9
powerful spell, but
cards.
also an army of guys to go with his opposition.
Yeah, you can tell that he's definitely keeping that opposition in mind. Although I have to say,
Pick up.
where does
20
this deck
seconds.
end up going? Like you've picked an Armageddon and a Battle Sphere.
Sure. I mean, I think you just draft, like, creature-based accelerants and just play all of those cards in your deck. You know,
Okay.
I mean, remember, Cube is limited. Like, you can just cast 7 mana creatures
Yeah.
sometimes.
5 seconds.
I see a Genesis, which can be a late game engine to get cards back.
Draft. Lay out
And it
That's
looks
8
like he's
cards.
gonna
looking
take it.
I bet he wishes he had that Sakura Tribe Elder
Yeah.
to go along with that Genesis. But yeah, Genesis
Pick
is
up.
on plan. I mean,
20 seconds.
it's not
Is
the
it?
most exciting card. Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
Like, you're just kind of like going for the mid to long game. You just want to be able to stay alive. You know, you want to increment some gradual advantage.
Okay.
Genesis makes sure you have creatures for your opposition.
5
Okay.
seconds.
You know, a lot of the way that people are going to combat you. You see him looking at the Rocks Warmonk right now.
Yeah, one of my
Draft.
favorite creatures.
Lay out
Very
7
simple
cards.
design, 3/4 lifelink for 3. Tough to cast on turn 3 without a lot of fixing, but the fixing is available in this
Pick up.
cube, and that
15
guy does a
seconds.
lot of work. He's tough to kill. He gains you life. He holds the ground really well.
Yeah, exactly. Along similar lines, we see him looking at Hierarch Parallax Wave, like we saw in the last draft. Always a giant bomb. Got to be
5
looking for an
seconds.
excuse to play that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on the same power level as opposition, really. And I think
Draft.
John might just be
Lay out
saying,
6
okay, well, what if I
cards.
just go base green-white?
All right, but
he took
instead he
Hierarch.
took the Hierarch. So that's an interesting one. I mean, his deck is making a
up.
pretty big
10
push towards
seconds.
the mid-range of the
Yeah.
of Magic here.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's what a lot of these decks
5
want to be.
seconds.
I mean, you know, repeal, again, problematic answers to problematic permanents.
Draft.
Just sort of very
Lay out
versatile,
5
easily
cards.
splashable
We see it, he
card.
took it over a Wrath of God there.
Yeah.
I think he figures he's going to have a lot of creatures.
Exactly. And
Pick
again,
up.
like the
10
velocity
seconds.
that card provides, you know, just getting you to more of your threats, letting you look at more cards, very important in a deck that's this
5
centered around
seconds.
big spells like Geddon and opposition.
Yep. Now he's going to take a Grim
Draft.
Lavamancer here, and my
Lay out 4
assumption. oh,
cards.
yeah, he is. My assumption is because he's planning on having a bunch of
Right.
small mana creatures, and
Pick
he
up.
doesn't want to get them
5
just mowed
seconds.
down by a Lavamancer.
We keep talking about sort of what his plan is. It's probably confusing to hear that. He's
Draft.
taking Tumble Magnet right
Lay out
now.
3
It's probably
cards.
confusing to hear that when we haven't seen any of those cards. But these
Right.
players have
Pick
done
up.
so many of
5
these
seconds.
drafts that they know the kind of overall strategies they can expect to look to try and play.
Exactly.
Draft.
He's going to take
Lay
a
out
Flicker
2 cards.
Wisp here. Flicker Wisp your Parallax
Pick up.
Wave.
5 seconds.
I don't believe he took Parallax Wave, but that
Oh,
would
he
be
didn't
very
take it?
power. He took Loxodon Hierarch. I
Oh,
believe.
that's right. I forgot.
Draft.
You sound very disappointed.
I'm a
Last
little bummed
card.
about it. I
Show
really
it to
like
the person
Parallax
behind
Wave.
you.
I think again, John prioritizing mana
You now
in
have
a very
30
intelligent
seconds to
way right
review.
here. I mean, he took the
Yeah.
mana fixing that he could find in Verdant Catacombs, which again, it sounds like a black-green fixer, but it gets any forest, any swamp, so it allows him to get his dual lands.
Tropical Island if he picks one up, that kind of thing.
Right, exactly. I mean, the thing is, I think he's prioritized spells that are relatively easy to cast. And you know, I think he's got to be disappointed he doesn't have something like a Bird of Paradise or a Noble Hierarch here.
Okay.
But he's got a lot of cards that he's going to look at before he's got to start getting too worried.
Yeah, so he's looking for a pretty powerful
Picks down, please.
mid-range strategy, although at least outside of opposition and
Open the
Armageddon,
pack
it
marked
isn't doing
B
anything
and
off
ensure
the
that it
charts
contains
power
15
level-wise.
Yeah,
cards.
exactly.
But it does look like it's going to have the ability to do some pretty serious grinding.
And right now, certainly, it's pretty hard to lose if you're able to actually cast Mere Battlesphere, and Devoted Druid accelerates him 2 turns to
Yeah.
doing that. So
Pick up.
I mean, certainly
50
he has ways to win.
Yep,
if
and
he
there's a
draws
path
them.
to exile he brings right to the front.
Oh,
And there's
man.
Karn Liberated again. You and my's favorite. We love that guy. Do you think he's going to take him here?
Yeah, I can't imagine passing this card.
It's a pretty
right here.
easy pick, right?
Well,
Especially given that he's going to be looking for mana accelerating creatures.
Exactly. Like, Path to Exile, really good right now, but I mean, it's hard to appreciate unless you played against Card Liberated and Cube. The card is very tough to beat.
Very tough to beat. If you're in a position where they can't kill you or him the next turn, he comes down and he's on 10 loyalty.
Right.
Like,
Right.
He's very, very resilient. He has a bodysuit of armor, and he wears it well. His 10 loyalty is pretty tough to get through. And then it's interesting, too, because he fills the gap on any deck, right? Like, because each color can deal with certain types of permanents or threats in certain ways, and other ones they can't. And Karn just says, I can kill that.
It's so important to just, especially when you're in colors like Bant, like Jana's, that aren't usually known for their, massive amount of removal. Just having diverse answers is so important for a deck like this, just so that some problematic threat doesn't just totally obliterate your game plan.
This is a pretty stacked deck. So there's a There's a Yavimaya Elder here, which is a good grindy card advantage type card. Gets you extra lands, gets you stuff like that. Along with it, though, is a Palladium Mirror, which is a little underrated because it does just power out stuff like Karn. And I saw one other card that caught my eye, Oblivion Ring.
Right.
Which is, of course, just a good catch-all.
Right, like we were talking about, Oblivion Ring, a nice, versatile answer. But I think with cards like Mirror Battlesphere and Karn in your deck, you really want this Palladium Mirror, especially given that it's good in concert with opposition.
Ah, yeah, good point. That, too.
Draft. Lay out
So,
13 cards.
And he did take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he went for the big power. Having a Soul Ring even on turn 3 is pretty sweet, and then having it stick around to power up your opposition is also nice.
Right, and having a 2/2 creature, really, you can't underestimate the value of that, too. Planeswalker is very format-defining in Cube, and just having something on the table that can threaten those is worth a lot.
Yep, I see Sower here. There's also Wickerbow Elder, and the Wickerbow Elder is going to be something that's going to be able to take care of a bunch of problematic things. I think that, when you normal draft, cards like Wickerbow Elder are always looked at as pretty good.
Yeah.
But in Cube, they essentially always have a target.
Right, and it gets bigger. I mean, and again, some of the most powerful things you're going to be up against are, like we saw Reid Duke prioritize control magic over basically everything, right? Like,
12
again, there are threats that you're going to have to contend with, and you can do so with Wickerbow Elder at very little opportunity cost.
30
you get a 3/3, and it becomes a 4/4 if you do it. If you don't do it, you still have a 3/3.
Right.
Now, taking a look now at Kozilek, Butcher of Truth in this pack.
Old Man of the Sea, Troll Ascetic, and then an Overgrown Tomb that it doesn't. Oh, there's also a Fauna Shaman. It doesn't look like the Overgrown Tomb is really in play here. He's not going to be playing black, at least as far as we know currently.
Yeah, right. I think Fauna Shaman's a pretty easy pick out of this pack, especially with Genesis in your pool.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Pitch Genesis. You can get this engine going as long as you can get the board stable enough so that you're still alive. You can give yourself inevitability.
Fauna Shaman goes very well with the Sower of Temptation he took last pack, too. It's a very narrow card, but it's a card you want to be able to cast at the right moment.
So you can pitch something irrelevant and grab your Sower, steal the card that they really got you with.
Right.
Ooh, look at.
Oh, man.
I don't know. We have a different camera, but John just looked up to the skies and shook his head. He's got his hand on his face right now because he's got 3 awesome cards in this pack for him. He's got a Tundra, which is just mana fixing that he needs.
Right.
He's got a Llanowar Elf, which, he wants that cheap turn 1 accelerant, and he's also got a Gilded Lotus, which is going to power out things like Karn, Battlesphere, fixes mana.
I think he's got to take the Gilded Lotus here. I mean, you really want Llanowar Elves in this deck. Like, the deck almost doesn't work without them. But with so many expensive, boom threats, Gilded Lotus just gets you right there and does fix your mana if you can live long enough to cast it.
He's passing 10 cards with that pack, so he does have a chance. Not every deck wants a Llanowar Elves. What did he take?
He's taking Basalt Monolith, which is huge here. Now, Basalt Monolith, it's an old card. It's a 3-mana artifact. Taps for 3 mana, doesn't untap unless you play 3 on your upkeep. So it sounds like it doesn't do a lot, but it gets you straight from 3 to 7 mana.
Yeah, which is key for this deck, especially since he's got 2 colorless bombs in 7 mana.
Right. And with
Basalt Monolith is
20
sweet.
seconds.
Right. With Basalt Monolith, Gilded Lotus, and Devoted Druid in your deck, you can also start looking at cards like Eldrazi or the elephant Terastodon or Avenger of
Yes.
Zendikar,
Yep.
you can start really reliably casting those.
5 seconds.
He's looking at Awakening Zone right now.
One
that's
of my
probably-
favorite cards
Oh,
of the last
yeah.
few years. I love Awakening Zone,
Draft
and that card is
layout 8
ideal
cards.
for this.
Yeah,
deck.
I can't imagine a better card.
I
for the
can't
deck.
either. It makes a creature for free every turn that
Pick
can
up,
be turned into
20
mana to
seconds.
ramp him, or tap stuff
Or
down
just
with
opposition lock them.
forever.
Yeah, I think you have to just actually be hoping to open Awakening Zone when you draft this deck.
That's fantastic. Now, he's choosing between a Condemn or an Into the Royal. There's also a Rancor, but I don't think that's going to go in the deck. Condemn, maybe just a necessary
5
card
seconds.
for his deck.
I think you just need Condemn to survive, although I think he's going to take the end of the
He
Royal.
wants to have a more
draft.
versatile answer
out
and a
7
way to,
cards.
get a little bit of card draw going.
Yeah, it's also possible he just doesn't want that many white cards.
Pick
You know,
up
you saw him pass the
15
Tundra.
seconds.
Condemn really only good in the early turns. It's not something like Path that can be used to push something through. You don't
Right.
want to really be holding up mana for it.
Right.
Now we see him
Alright.
taking a look at Academy
seconds.
Ruins, very good with his Mirrored Battle Sphere and his Gilded Lotus artifacts in case those go
Draft.
away.
Lay out
Also eyeing
6
Thawing
cards.
Glaciers, but Ruins seems to be the pick here.
Yeah, so how often do you think this actually makes the deck? It produces
Pick up
colorless
10
mana,
seconds.
and when you're in a straight 3-color deck, that can be pretty tough.
Yeah, it can. There's certainly a huge cost to playing it.
Ooh.
No.
So normally Temporal Mastery isn't something that you would bring to the front of the pack, but
Draft.
honestly, he can draw
out
it.
5
He can actually
cards.
just cast that
Yeah,
card if he wants. Now,
exactly.
what did he take?
He took Tinker, which again with Battle Sphere in your deck and with Basalt Monolith, like it's
Pick
tapped,
up
so it's
10
literally
seconds.
useless.
Yes.
Great, perfect card to tinker away. And Gilded Lotus, which is good to tinker up. I think you have to take
5
it.
seconds.
Obviously, Memory Jar, a huge boon to any deck playing Tinker as well.
Yeah, Memory Jar is an
Draft.
interesting one
Lay out
because it's
4
a card
cards.
that doesn't. When you, I had to read it like 3
Yeah.
times, and I'm like, does this actually do
Pick
what I
up
think it does?
5
And it
seconds.
turns out, yeah, it does.
Yeah, right. For those of you at home, it has a ton of words on it. The
Draft.
main thing this card does
Lay
is
out
just
3
draw you
cards.
7 cards that you only get to use that turn.
Right.
It also
Pick up
makes your opponent
5
draw and
seconds.
discard, but what you really care about is, okay, I've got a lot of mana, now I need cards. You see him picking up
Draft.
a regrowth now, very good with his draw
Yeah, 2
sevens,
cards.
very good as he churns through his deck. Also good
Pick
with
up
Tinker, you can
5
get the artifact
seconds.
you sacked back. Really just a nice versatile card. These last several picks, I
Draft
think he took Ray of
and take the
Revelation
last
and
card.
now Woolly
Show it to the
Factor.
person behind you.
Yeah, the key with Memory Jar also being that you get
Now
to
have
not spend
45
mana to
seconds
do
for
that,
Yes.
right? You get to
Right.
untap, activate the thing, and any sorceries or creatures that your opponent draws, they're not going to be able to cast. It's your
Right.
turn.
Although each player draws the cards, it's not like something like Time Twister where you know your opponent's going to use them. Chances are your opponent is not going to be able to take advantage of that.
Right.
You know, also,
and at the beginning of this end step, those cards go away. So
precisely.
you have a window to use them, and if you don't, they're gone.
Now, something that's very interesting about this deck that I haven't seen in Cube that many times, he can set up Academy Ruins Memory Jar
Yeah.
to potentially even deck his opponent.
Yes, he can. That's interesting. He's also got a regrowth there for a one-time shot at many different things here.
You see him not even move opposition to the forefront. That might just be the way his mana curve's working out, but he's looking now to be more of just like a big mana artifact deck.
Picks
Yeah.
down, please.
Which is interesting. I'm curious to see if his
Open the
picks
pack
change
mod C,
because of that
make sure
outlook.
it
Like
has
the
15
Tinker, does that
cards.
throw a big wrench in the kind of things that he might be picking?
Right.
Maybe he'll prioritize big colorless spells. I mean, he's already been doing that anyway, but
Even more of them. I mean, you've got to really want Sundering
Pick up
Titan.
50
Like, that's kind of the
seconds.
card that you're just really hoping to windmill slam right now. Obviously, cards like Awakening Zone still very good. Wow, Primeval Titan, very huge card in a
Oh,
deck like
man.
this. They can really appreciate going from 6 to 7 or 8. On the other hand, Thelanite Hermit, mind-bogglingly powerful with opposition. I mean, you can really tap down your opponent's entire board.
and that's the morph
Yes.
hermit the one that makes
The
a bunch
morph
of tokens.
deranged hermit, right?
Yeah.
3 mana to play face down. You flip it up for 5. You get 4 1/1s that he makes into 2/2s. But it looks like Finkel's going to go for a Primeval Titan.
You just have to slam prime time here, right?
I think so. I mean, it's certainly like, if it's good in a deck,
Yes.
it is good in this deck.
Yes, I agree.
And like, I mean, Basalt
seconds.
Monolith is a perfect card to go with it, as is Devoted Druid. Again, like
Draft.
tinkering up Gilded
Has
Lotus is
14
better. The
cards.
more cards you have that can capitalize on that top end.
Right. So is he going to be looking
Pick
for
up 50
for
seconds.
cheap artifacts with which to for Tinker fodder?
I certainly think you have to. I mean, I don't know what your plan is if you don't. Now, Misty, like Everflowing Chalice would be really good here. Compulsive Research to draw into that. Misty to cast his spells. Night of the Reliquary actually accelerates him if he can cast it.
It does. It does some work in this deck. It's also just a great blocker.
Right. I mean, that's the other thing about decks with this high of a top end. You need to survive, and you also want to make your opponents burn their removal early.
Yeah.
So when you cast one of those big threats, they really take the game away.
But it's tough because that Misty Rainforest is just looming. He knows he needs cards like that, and in fact, he does take it. Again, the Zach Hill method, like you got to do it, right? You just got to have the discipline to say, I need the fixing here. This is really two of his primary colors. He just has to do it.
Yeah, and he needs both colors early.
Yes.
I mean, like, you've
Draft.
got to have double blue for
Layout,
opposition.
13
He's got cards like Repeal and End of the Royal that are sort of, a key part of his defense. And
Pick
if
up,
you don't
40
access
seconds.
those colors until later, your deck's just going to roll over.
Ooh, he sees one of my favorite Magic cards.
Vendilion Click.
Jeez.
Oh, but yeah.
So a few things that we see here are the Sundering Titan that you just mentioned,
Right.
Zach, and there's also a Vendilion Click, which can do a lot of work against some decks. What do you like here? Does he just have to take the
I
Sundering
think you
Titan?
have to take the Titan because it's just game over in concert with Tinker so much. Vendilion Click, very good in a deck like this because you can power through your most important spells, but Titan just is a free win by virtue of sitting in your deck. And it's not as though he can't cast it either, And he's actually probably going to be fewer colors than a lot of the people he's up against.
5
So Sundering
seconds.
Titan, really an asymmetrical Armageddon effect a lot of the time in a deck that can
Draft.
power it out like
Lay
this
out
deck.
12 cards.
Yeah, I mean, with Tinker in your deck, there's very few cards you'd rather open.
Pick up, 30 seconds.
All right, we see him take a look at Wooded Foothills. Now, he doesn't have a lot of dual lands to capitalize upon those sack outlets. I think you want to take Cold Steel Heart here just to have something on the table for you to tinker away.
Tinker away, plus that ramps you up, right? It's ramp, fixing, and tinkerable. Like, how do you not just take that?
Card drawing is very good in decks like this, so you aren't just all in on like all accelerants, all late game. But I think Cold Steel Heart, I mean, what more do you
5
want?
seconds.
Yeah, he's looking at Obstinate Bailoff as well, and that has to be a consideration if you're
Draft.
going to be facing like
Lay
a
out
mono
11
red deck or
cards.
some deck that's just going to try to run you over very, very quickly. You would like to have an Obstinate Bailoff to help
For sure.
to do that, but the
Pick
Cold
up,
Steel Heart just seems to have so
25
much
seconds.
utility in his
Yeah,
deck.
and he's got Locked in Hierarch already, so
There you
it's
go.
sort of diminishing returns. Now, Tarmogoyf kind of does everything for him. Balance, we're seeing Balance go super
Jeez.
late,
Wow, and a Pristine Talisman, though, which, again, just works so well in his deck.
for sure.
So what do you like here? I mean, the Pristine Talisman seems to fit the best in the deck as it sits, but
5
Balance is sweet. He is in white, and Goyf can do some work. I don't
Draft.
think,
Lay out
Tarmogoyf
10
is
cards.
necessarily, he just takes it. I really can't blame him there.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, he just needs artifacts, right? Like, if he's on a plan, he's on a plan. Talisman
Pick
fits
up,
all of his plans,
25
keeps him
seconds.
alive, it accelerates by itself, and it's another thing to tinker away.
Yeah.
All right, now we see City of Traders, very important to a deck like this that needs to get to a certain threshold of mana as soon as it can. Kasali Pride Maids answering problematic permanents and being able to provide some early defense.
I think I would take the Pride Mage here. I don't know
5
that this
seconds.
deck is going to be super well set up for City of Traders.
Sure. And
Like,
the
it could lead
colors
to
are
some of the most
Lay out
explosive
9
starts
cards.
possible, right?
Right. You're right, though, that like having colorless lands is pretty high cost in a deck like this. Pride Mage sort of does everything, and like
20
frankly, you
seconds.
want it. You're glad that it's not getting cast against you
Yeah,
in a deck that's this reliant upon artifacts and specifically Gilded Lotus.
absolutely.
All right, so we see Celestial Purge, a nice sideboard card against some of the format's most popular decks. Hex Parasite, good against Planeswalkers.
5
I almost
seconds.
want to take Porcelain Legionnaire here. It blocks, it gets tinkered away. It just sort of is a solid role
Draft.
player. Wait, is
Lay
he
out 8
looking at
cards.
Vines of
He
Vastwood?
took Vines of Vastwood. I
I don't understand.
don't think he
that.
has anything that he needs to protect, right? Most of his stuff comes into play and does
Pick up,
what it's going to
20
do, and if it
seconds.
gets removed after that, he can live with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand that pick. All right, we're looking at Bonfire of the Damned, huge right now. Birthing Pod, again, an artifact that has some value in his deck, especially if he's playing cards like Genesis, like we talked about.
5 seconds.
Is that what is that, Harmonize? Or
That's a Seal of Primordium.
Oh, Seal of Primordium. So it's
Draft.
essentially a disenchant
Lay out
type
7
effect that
cards.
you have on the table. He is going to take it. He needs to be able to deal with those type
Yep.
of things, apparently.
Yeah, he didn't get the Wicker Ballad earlier, so you want to have some
Pick
ways
up,
to threaten those.
15
Disenchants
seconds.
in general, just very good in Cube.
Yeah. Like I said, you just always seem to have a target.
Now, is that a? Oh, he tables the Thelonite Hermit, takes it out of the
Yeah.
back, and the back just slams it
5
down.
I'm not even that surprised. Is that a smokestack in the pack, too?
I
That's
couldn't
interesting.
tell.
But
Draft.
yeah, Thelonite
Lay out
Hermit,
6
that
cards.
isn't one of those high-profile cards. We do get confirmation from Sheldon that was, in fact, a smokestack. I don't
Pick
know
up,
how well it goes in
10
a deck like
seconds.
this. I've never put a smokestack I've played it now, but
Yeah,
I've never
sure.
played it in a deck like this.
I don't really
5
cut
seconds.
Smokestack.
I know how much you love Smokestack.
But I mean, Felonite Hermit's exactly what he wanted. He was
Right.
going to
Yeah,
take it
for
earlier. Now we see him
Lay
take
out
Phyrexian
5
Revoker.
cards.
Underrated ability in Cube
Oh,
with all the
man.
planeswalkers and mana artifacts, and just having an artifact to tinker away
Pick up.
a creature
10
to tap
seconds.
to opposition, and an answer to some problematic cards like Grim Lawmancer, Planeswalker. You've got to be excited.
It
about
does
that with
everything
five
he wants to do. It's funny. And now he picks up
Enlightened Tutor.
an Enlightened
Draft.
Tutor, which is going to
Lay
be
out
able to
4
grab
cards.
any number of pieces that he needs to kind of make the puzzle work. for
Yeah,
him.
it can get opposition, which is important. I think he's going to want to Enlighten
up.
Tutor for
5
Basalt
seconds.
Monolith a fair
Yeah,
amount
but
of the
Salt
time.
Monolith is going to be a big one for him, I'm sure.
Like, he's going to win a lot of games just casting Karn. He takes Obstinate
Draft.
Baloth here
Lay out
out
3
of this
cards.
pack.
So, good.
Yeah, like you were talking about, just more
Pick up,
resilience against
5
the red
seconds.
decks. Good against something like, Liliana the Veil.
Yeah, Brian Elemental. I don't think that's not the
Draft.
kind of card that he's
Lay
going
out
to be
2
running in
cards.
this deck, though.
I
right?
don't think so. My guess is that he wouldn't.
Pick up. 5 seconds.
I mean, he can cast it.
Yeah, sure. He takes Obliterate instead of Goblin Goo. Doesn't want to produce a ton of mana, get it all on the
Draft.
board, and just have
Pass
it
the final
obliterated
card
away.
and show it to the
And
person
then
behind
Sprouting
you.
Thrynax, just it's the last card in the pack.
Please leave your picks face
He
down
shows us,
until deck
shows us
construction.
the Sprouting Thrynax.
I'm surprised he didn't look at Cheldoran Outpost more.
Said
Maybe
it
he
would
was just
come.
confident that he wasn't going to be able to play it. But, I mean, any deck with opposition, you have to at least be thinking about your 1/1 tokens.
Right. Yeah, I think I really like his deck.
I really like this deck, too.
And looks like we're going to be coming back. Hi, I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. That is Zach Hill, and we just watched 2 really sweet Cube drafts. I think that they showed off 2 of the archetypes you can do in Cube.
Right.
There's more.
Oh, yeah. There may be hundreds more.
There might be,
There-
but
there's a lot of
these are
things you
2
can do.
popular ones, I think. Ramping
Right.
is something that in the original online Cube was very popular. I think a lot of the elements have carried over to the
Right.
to the next version of it, which we're seeing here.
Well, as something it's interesting to me, Reid Duke, a lot younger player,
Yep.
sort of raised on Magic Online, taking a lot of the cards that are the type of cards that are good in Standard now.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of ways to affect the board, a lot of big effects, a lot of powerful threats, card advantage. Finkel taking a deck that would have been good in, 2000, right? It's got Tinkers, it's got Artifact Accelerants, it does one very, very powerful thing. 2 sort of different philosophies of
He
gameplay.
knows his he knows his cards from his
Yeah,
heyday.
opposition, yeah.
which is then and now.
Yeah.
But anyway, but yeah, fantastic. And I really like his deck
Yeah,
too.
I do too.
I think the question that I always have when I put together a deck like this, I've drafted similar decks on Magic Online, is do I have enough answers? Like I
Right.
always go, okay, I've got the threats, I've got the ramp, I've got the interactions, but like if they play something that I can't deal
Right,
with,
what am I going to do about
what
that?
am I going to do? And the challenge that John's going to face as he builds is how many of those answers do you include in the main deck
Precisely.
versus how many do you wait to see whatever it is? Because sometimes these ramp decks just go so big so quick that you don't care what your opponent
No,
does.
that's exactly right.
Okay, it looks like we're ready to head back down to the studio. So we're going to send it back over there. When we come back, we're going to start watching actual Cube matches. This is going to be really exciting. So for now, though, back to the studio.